It happened so fast I didn't even have time to process it. 10:17 a.m. One hand gripped the edge of the mahogany conference table. The other held the final draft of the $3.2 billion Renewable Energy Infrastructure Agreement, freshly printed with signatures from every stakeholder except ours. My tea sat beside me, still steaming, untouched. I remember thinking the contract looked bulletproof. I remember thinking this was going to change everything. Then Victoria Sterling walked in. She didn't knock, didn't wait for the environmental compliance team to finish their presentation, didn't even glance at the renewable energy partners on the video call. She simply adjusted her pearl necklace, straightened her blazer, and delivered the blow. "Claire, we're terminating your employment. Effective immediately." For a heartbeat, I thought she was talking to someone behind me. For a heartbeat, I still believed 6 years of devotion meant something. The room went dead silent. Not Marcus from legal, not Elena who had worked alongside me through countless late nights. Just crushing silence. I started to speak, but Victoria raised her manicured hand like I was a child interrupting adults. "We need leadership that embraces innovation," she continued, eyes fixed on her tablet screen. "Agility, fresh perspectives, less institutional resistance." Institutional resistance. That's what I'd become. I had given Meridian Energy Solutions 6 years of my life. I survived 2 hostile takeover attempts, a regulatory scandal that nearly destroyed our green certification, and a cyber attack that crippled our European operations. I designed the blockchain verification system they now relied on. I wrote the sustainability protocols. And Victoria? She'd arrived 8 months ago from a failed fintech startup, armed with buzzwords and a Harvard MBA the board worshipped. She stepped around the table and plucked the contract from my hands. "We'll handle this from here," she said, flashing that practiced smile. "The $7.6 billion carbon credit deal goes live this afternoon. Should make our ESG metrics look exceptional." I said nothing because she had just dismissed the only person who understood the system well enough to know, without my biometric signature, that deal had 15 minutes to live. I didn't say a word when I walked out of that boardroom. The hallway felt different, brighter, sharper. Or maybe that was just the shock. I didn't rush, didn't break down. I just kept walking, the contract still clutched in my hand like a lifeline to everything I'd built. The $3.2 billion renewable infrastructure deal. I'd spent 18 months crafting it, the one that was supposed to fund clean energy access for underserved communities. The one that would finally make my mother's name mean something lasting. I pressed the elevator button, it chimed too cheerfully, and as the doors closed around me, sealing me off from the chaos about to unfold upstairs, the memories hit. 6 years. That's how long I'd given Meridian. I started here as a junior sustainability analyst when I was 26. My resume didn't scream Ivy League, state school degree, mother who cleaned offices on the night shift. She used to call me her world changer when I stayed late analyzing carbon offset calculations. What she didn't know was that I wasn't just analyzing. I was innovating, creating algorithms that could detect greenwashing faster than any auditing firm, building verification systems that would revolutionize clean energy trading. From analyst to coordinator to senior manager, then department head, then finally senior VP of environmental strategy. I never had a sponsor. No one opened doors for me. I kicked them down myself until they stopped slamming shut. I survived 3 CEOs, 1 SEC investigation, and a compliance nightmare that would have destroyed the company if I hadn't caught the fraudulent carbon credits buried in the subsidiary reports. They called me intense. Fine. Intensity keeps the planet breathable and corporations honest. But here's what no one knew, not even HR. That bonus from the $3.2 billion infrastructure contract wasn't going towards some luxury vacation. It was for the Maria Santos Clean Energy Foundation, named after my mother. She'd spent her life maintaining buildings that consumed more energy than they should have, watching from the sidelines as executives made decisions about sustainability without understanding the real cost. This foundation was going to provide scholarships for environmental engineering students from working-class families, solar technician training, wind energy programs, green architecture apprenticeships. Real opportunities for real change. Last year, EcoVantage Global tried to poach me. Double the salary, unlimited budget, full autonomy. I turned them down. Loyalty matters, I told them. I'm not finished here yet. I believed that. I truly did. But now, standing in that elevator, staring at my reflection in the polished steel, my badge still hanging around my neck, my hands weren't shaking from anger. They were shaking from loss of purpose, of trust, of 6 years thinking I was part of something that wouldn't discard me like obsolete technology. The doors opened to the lobby. Security nodded but didn't stop me. Not yet. Maybe the termination notice hadn't reached them. Maybe my access hadn't been revoked yet. I stepped outside into the crisp morning air and squinted into the sunlight. They thought I was finished. Outdated. Replaceable. But what they didn't realize was that I had built their entire verification infrastructure. And soon they'd learn exactly how much they still needed me. The leather seat was still warm beneath me as I sat in my car, badge still hanging from my neck like some cruel reminder. 6 years of dedication erased in 2 sentences. As I stared through the windshield at the Meridian Tower, the memory of how it all started came flooding back. It began the day Victoria Sterling strutted into Meridian like she'd bought the building. She wasn't wearing a visitor's badge at the quarterly all-hands like everyone else. She didn't need one. Everything about her screamed authority: tailored Armani suit, designer handbag, no laptop, just a sleek tablet that seemed more like a prop. She smiled like she was already bored, then delivered a 20-minute presentation about disrupting traditional sustainability models that had the board hanging on every buzzword. The title was invented for her, Chief Innovation Officer. We'd never had one. We didn't even know what it meant, but it became clear quickly. She was the board's demolition expert. At first, I tried to give her a chance. New leadership brings new perspectives. Change can be good. But Victoria didn't want to improve things. She wanted to replace everything that came before her. She brought in consultants from McKinsey who'd never worked in environmental compliance. She hired VPs from tech companies who thought carbon credits were cryptocurrency. She fast-tracked initiatives without environmental impact assessments, suggesting we outsource our verification processes to AI systems that couldn't tell clean energy from coal. "Isn't sustainability just good marketing with extra steps?" she said once during a leadership meeting, while our entire environmental team sat there speechless. I remember gripping my coffee cup so hard I thought it would shatter. She didn't like me from day one. I didn't defer to her expertise, because she had none. I didn't applaud her innovations, because they violated basic environmental principles. I didn't need her approval, because my work spoke for itself. And worse, I didn't fear her. She knew I had influence. That my digital signature was required for any environmental contract above $500 million. That I could walk into a room with EPA administrators and UN climate officials and be treated as an equal. She called people like me legacy thinkers in those closed-door restructuring meetings. "We've got too many old-school environmentalists slowing us down. Time to plant new seeds." 4 months ago, I almost lost my job. Quietly. There was a system failure on a $920 million clean energy procurement deal. Victoria had insisted on bypassing our environmental due diligence to move at startup speed. It backfired spectacularly. Timelines collapsed, compliance checks failed, and the entire agreement had to be scrapped. Then came the internal memo to the board, not reviewed by legal, claiming the delay resulted from my department's outdated verification protocols. But server logs don't lie. Our IT director, Ryan, quietly flagged access overrides performed by Victoria's consultants. He sent me the audit trail with a simple message: "They're setting you up. Document everything." I did. I brought it to legal counsel, not to retaliate, just to protect the company. The board buried it. No investigation, no consequences, but Victoria didn't forget that I'd survived her first attempt. I knew she was waiting for the right moment, something big enough, visible enough that no one would notice she was changing the pilot mid-flight. That moment was the $7.6 billion carbon credit deal. The same one she'd smiled about while ripping the infrastructure contract from my hands, treating me like a messenger instead of the architect who'd built the entire system. What she didn't know, what she'd never bothered to learn, was that the carbon credit verification system required a biometric authentication token embedded in the blockchain. Mine. Without it, her perfect PR launch would be nothing but digital smoke. She thought she was clearing dead weight. But the system was still listening, and it only recognized one voice. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed to life. Time to see if she'd actually read the technical specifications she'd been so eager to approve. with blockchain algorithms I'd sketched during late-night coding sessions. The glass award from I didn't drive away immediately. I just sat in the parking garage, hands resting on the steering wheel, breathing slowly. There was something almost peaceful about knowing what was coming while they remained oblivious. From the glove compartment, I pulled out a small biometric scanner, matte black, about the size of a credit card. I hadn't used it in months, but when I pressed my thumb to the sensor, it glowed blue. Connected. Hello Claire, I whispered to myself. Let's see if they remember why they needed you. 8 months earlier, after a near-catastrophic breach where someone had tried to forge environmental compliance certificates, I'd spent 6 weeks rebuilding our entire verification infrastructure. Not because I was paranoid, because I was responsible. That's when I created what the system logs called Protocol Gaia, a fail-safe embedded in every major environmental contract. Simple principle: if the original architect's biometric signature wasn't present during contract execution, the system would initiate auto-termination within 15 minutes. It wasn't vindictive. It was protective. Digital environmental contracts deal with carbon credits worth billions, renewable energy certificates that could power entire cities, sustainability bonds that fund climate solutions worldwide. One forged signature could destabilize the entire green economy. Convincing legal was the hard part. Too restrictive, they argued. What if you're sick? What if you're traveling? I explained the difference between security and convenience. We nearly lost a $1 billion clean energy deal because someone bypassed verification protocols. If I'm the architect, I should be present for execution. If I'm not available, the contract waits. If I'm permanently unavailable, there's a succession protocol. And who approves this? The Chief Innovation Officer. Victoria had signed off on Protocol Gaia during her 3rd week, barely glancing at the documentation. If it makes us look cutting-edge to regulators, implement it, she'd said, scribbling her signature across pages she'd never read. She'd approved her own countdown timer. I embedded Protocol Gaia into every environmental contract exceeding $1 billion, including the $7.6 billion carbon credit deal currently being prepped for launch. The execution required one thing: my biometric authentication, coded as Santos Prime, hard-coded into the blockchain, unclonable, irreplaceable. Without it, the system would accept all preliminary data, queue the transaction, display green lights on every dashboard, and then quietly begin the 15-minute countdown. To outside observers, everything would look perfect until the moment it collapsed. From my car, I accessed the secure monitoring dashboard through my phone. There it was. Protocol Gaia alert. Biometric signature, Santos Prime missing. Contract, carbon credit, 7.6B, INTL. Auto-termination initiated, 10:32 a.m. Time remaining, 12 minutes, 47 seconds. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I just watched the countdown, knowing that somewhere in that glass tower, Victoria was about to learn the difference between disrupting an industry and understanding it. This wasn't revenge. This was the protocol she'd signed. The one she'd never bothered to read. The one that ensured no one could ever again assume they could replace the system architect without consequences. The clock ticked down. They had 12 minutes to figure out what they'd lost. I walked back into the Meridian building like I'd forgotten something important. Because I had, my dignity, my legacy, and the contents of my desk that represented 6 years of building something meaningful. The security guard, Paul, nodded with confusion. Thought you were in the big meeting upstairs, Claire. Just grabbing a few things, I said, badge still working, elevator still recognizing my access code. My office on the 15th floor felt different now, like visiting a museum of my former life. Everything exactly as I'd left it 30 minutes earlier, the NASA-gifted plant thriving under the LED growth light, my engineering awards lined up on the bookshelf, the framed photo of my mother at her community college graduation ceremony. She'd gone back to school at 55 to study environmental science because of conversations we'd had about my work. I pulled out a small cardboard box from under my desk. No corporate logo, no tape, just 4 flaps waiting to hold the pieces of my professional identity. First, the photo of my mother in her cap and gown, beaming with pride. Then the notebook filled the UN Climate Summit where I'd presented our carbon verification breakthrough. A coffee mug from the Copenhagen Environmental Conference. Finally, my nameplate, Claire Santos, Senior VP Environmental Strategy. It had never sat quite straight on my desk. I'd always meant to fix it. As I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed. A secure system alert. Protocol Gaia status update. Time remaining, 8 minutes, 14 seconds. Override attempts, 17, all failed. System status, countdown active. Through the elevator's glass wall, I could see the 22nd floor conference room where Victoria was probably standing at the head of the table, confident and commanding, waiting to announce the successful launch of the largest carbon credit deal in corporate history. What she didn't know yet was that somewhere in the blockchain verification queue, a quiet digital voice was asking a simple question: where is Claire Santos? And when the system couldn't find me, when my biometric signature failed to authenticate, it would do exactly what I'd programmed it to do 8 months earlier. It would protect the integrity of the environmental marketplace by making sure no one could forge, steal, or bypass the architect's approval. The elevator descended past the lobby, past the parking garage, carrying me away from 6 years of my life. As the doors opened to the street level, my phone chimed one more time. Protocol Gaia final notice. Time remaining, 4 minutes, 32 seconds. External partners notified, standby. Contract termination, imminent. I stepped out into the morning sunlight, cardboard box in my arms, and waited. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is let the system work exactly as designed. I was 3 blocks away, sitting in my car outside a small coffee shop, when the alert came through. The notification was quiet, almost polite. Protocol Gaia, execution complete. Contract carbon credit, 7.6B, INTL, terminated. Reason, authentication failure, primary architect unavailable. Status, irreversible. I stared at the screen, feeling something between vindication and sadness. This wasn't what I'd wanted. I'd built Protocol Gaia to protect environmental contracts from fraud, not to watch 6 years of relationships crumble in real time. But I'd also built it because I'd seen too many good environmental initiatives destroyed by people who thought sustainability was just another corporate buzzword. My phone started buzzing. First a call from legal, then from Ryan in IT, then from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all go to voicemail. Then a text message appeared from Elena, my former deputy. Claire, they're looking for you. Victoria is, please call back. Something went wrong with the carbon credit launch. I could picture the chaos unfolding on the 22nd floor. The confident presentation turning into confusion as green status lights suddenly switched to red. The frantic calls to IT support. The growing realization that their billion-dollar deal had simply vanished from the blockchain. And Victoria, standing at the front of the room, probably still trying to maintain control while everything she'd claimed to understand revealed itself as far more complex than her consultants had prepared her for. At 10:52 a.m., my phone rang with a number I recognized, the main conference room line. I answered on the 4th ring. Claire. Victoria's voice was tight, controlled, but with an edge I'd never heard before. We need you to come back upstairs. There seems to be some technical issue with the carbon credit verification system. I'm no longer employed by Meridian Energy Solutions, I said calmly. As of 10:17 this morning, remember? This is about system access. We need your authentication to resolve a temporary glitch. I sat in silence for a moment, watching pedestrians walk past the coffee shop window, living their normal Tuesday morning lives while an environmental empire collapsed 15 blocks away. Victoria, I said finally, that wasn't a glitch. That was Protocol Gaia working exactly as designed. The protocol you approved 8 months ago. Another pause. Then, what are you talking about? Page 47 of the technical specifications. The ones you signed without reading. Every major environmental contract requires biometric authentication from the system architect. When that architect is no longer available, the system protects itself. I could hear voices in the background, urgent whispers, someone saying something about blockchain termination and irreversible process. Claire, we can work this out. Full reinstatement, salary increase, whatever you need. The contract is already terminated, Victoria. It would take me 6 months to rebuild the verification infrastructure, assuming our international partners were willing to trust a company that just demonstrated it doesn't understand its own systems. The line went quiet except for the sound of Victoria's breathing. "You did this on purpose," she said finally. "I built a security system that worked perfectly. You chose to remove the architect without understanding the architecture. The system simply responded to your decision." I hung up and turned off my phone. Outside, the autumn sun was warming the sidewalk, and somewhere across town, a woman who'd spent 6 years building something meaningful was about to find out whether her work could survive without the institution that had created it. The coffee shop was quiet except for the hiss of the espresso machine and the gentle murmur of morning conversations. I sat by the window, sunlight streaming across my small table, warming a cup of tea that I was actually able to enjoy for the first time in months. No urgent emails. No board meetings. No Victoria Sterling questioning my every decision while understanding none of my work. Just me, hot tea, and the news alerts scrolling across my tablet screen. Meridian Energy Solutions stock plunges 22% after $7.6 billion deal collapse. Environmental compliance breach triggers massive carbon credit failure. Industry experts question corporate understanding of blockchain verification. I didn't smile reading them. There was no satisfaction in watching something I'd helped build crumble, even when it had discarded me. My laptop chimed softly. I opened it to find my personal dashboard, not Meridian's corporate portal, but the private system I'd been quietly developing for 2 years. The screen showed Santos Environmental Verification Systems, Independent Contractor Portal. A new message was waiting in my inbox. The sender made me sit up straighter. Dr. Amara Okafor, Director of Climate Finance, African Development Bank. "Claire, we've been following the situation at Meridian with great interest. Not the corporate drama, the technical implications. Your Protocol Gaia system is exactly what we need for our $4.2 billion renewable energy initiative across sub-Saharan Africa. Would you be available to discuss leading our environmental verification infrastructure as an independent contractor? Full autonomy, direct UN partnership, and the chance to implement clean energy solutions for communities that need them most. Best regards, Dr. Okafor." I stared at the message, then read it again. 6 months ago, I'd quietly registered Santos Environmental Verification as a Delaware LLC, not out of disloyalty to Meridian, but out of pragmatism. I'd seen too many talented environmental engineers get pushed out by corporate restructuring, their expertise wasted because they tied their identity to companies that didn't value their knowledge. My phone buzzed with another message, this time from Green Tech Solutions Nordic. "Claire, urgent. Can you verify if your blockchain protocol is available for licensing? We have $2.8 billion in renewable energy contracts that need your authentication system." Then another, Pacific Environmental Trust. "The carbon credit marketplace needs independent verification leaders. Are you available for consultation?" And another, Clean Energy Coalition. "Claire, the industry is asking for you specifically. When can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the street where normal people were going about their Tuesday, unaware that the environmental finance world was quietly reorganizing itself around systems I'd built in my spare time. My tablet chimed with one more message, this one from an encrypted address I didn't immediately recognize. "Claire, this is Dr. Maria Gutierrez from the UN Climate Finance Verification Board. We've been monitoring the Meridian situation, and we're impressed by the integrity safeguards you built into your authentication system. We'd like to discuss making Santos Environmental Verification the official blockchain verification partner for all UN climate finance initiatives. This would include oversight of approximately $12 billion in annual climate funding worldwide. The position comes with full technical autonomy and the resources to build the environmental verification infrastructure the world actually needs. Are you interested in saving the planet properly this time? Best, Dr. Gutierrez." I closed the laptop and sat back, watching steam rise from my tea. Somewhere across town, Victoria Sterling was probably in crisis meetings, trying to explain to the board how they'd lost their most valuable environmental contracts by firing the person who designed their entire verification system. But I wasn't thinking about Meridian anymore. I was thinking about my mother, who'd spent her life maintaining buildings that wasted energy because the people making decisions didn't understand the real environmental costs. I was thinking about the Maria Santos Clean Energy Foundation that would now be funded not by corporate bonuses, but by independent contracts that actually prioritized environmental integrity over quarterly profits. I was thinking about the communities across Africa and the Pacific who needed clean energy solutions designed by people who understood both the technology and the mission. I opened my laptop again and began typing. Dr. Gutierrez. Yes. Let's build something that works. Claire Santos. Santos Environmental Verification Systems. Outside, the sun climbed higher, and somewhere in the global environmental finance network, the future was quietly rearranging itself around systems designed by someone who'd never forgotten why the work mattered. They tried to replace me with buzzwords and consulting firms. Instead, they'd freed me to build the infrastructure the planet actually needed. Sometimes the best revenge is simply doing the work right. If you've ever been pushed aside, told you were obsolete, or watched your expertise dismissed by people who didn't understand what you'd built, I see you. And I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Drop a comment, even just to say you've reclaimed something they thought they could take away from you. If this resonated with you, please like, share with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. I'll keep sharing stories about what happens when expertise meets integrity, and when corporations learn the hard way that some systems can't be replaced, only rebuilt by the people who understood them first.